Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today is part 3 in the series where I'm walking you through the process I took to create this Smart Diffuser app and case study. If you're new to this series, go back and watch part 1 and 2 before you watch this video, and also take a look at the case study on Behance if you want a little bit more context. So now that we have planned our research and conducted our interviews, now it's time to go back through them and synthesize our findings and draw some conclusions. But before you get into the nitty-gritty of organizing your interviews and going back through and listening to them again, I would actually recommend sitting down and just thinking about how they went and thinking about some standout things that people said that really stuck with you, any standout insights or things that people said that surprised you, some general commonalities that you noticed, and just your initial reactions. This is honestly going to be so helpful because these are the things that are probably the most important findings from your research. Yes, when you go back through, you're probably going to remember more things, especially if you did tons of interviews and you forgot some, but honestly, these first initial reactions are probably what is going to drive your project the most. So set aside some time, sit down, and just jot down your initial reactions and things that really struck you during these interviews. Then once you've done that, you can get into the nitty-gritty. So I personally used a free trial of Dovetail just because I was really interested in how the program worked. I used it to put in my interviews. I just put in the MP4s and it transcribed everything, as close as it could, and I was able to tag the different interviews, highlight things and categorize them. And while that was super helpful, I don't think that it's really worth buying Dovetail just to do that. I think there are tons of other programs that will help you do it. One that I have not used but I've heard great things about is otter.io. So that's something that is either free or a little bit more affordable that you could try out. But even if you don't want to go through and transcribe all of your interviews, I would just recommend going back and listening to them again and jotting down notes of things that are important. But if you do want to take this a step further, I would recommend going through and pulling some quotes, highlight those, and categorize them. So for example, the way I did this was the following categories: who they live with, whether or not they limit their tech use, the types of self-care they practice, their desired mood for their home, the time of day that they use their diffuser, and the benefits that they get out of essential oils. This way I was able to cross-reference whether there were any commonalities and relationships between these things. For example, did people who live alone practice self-care in certain ways? Did people who limit their tech use have certain benefits that they looked for in essential oils? So categorizing the data in that way can be really helpful if it's something that you're curious about. Once you have a good refresher of everything that you covered in these interviews and some general insights, now it's a great time to do some empathy mapping. So if you've never heard of empathy mapping, it's basically a way to put yourself in the user's shoes and imagine them using the product in the environment that they would be in real life. So you have an image in the middle that represents the user, and then around the user you have different sections of places to put sticky notes that fill in each category. So the top category is goals and constraints. So figure out what the goals of the user is that's using your product and what constraints they have. For this project, for example, I had the goals and constraints as develop a regular self-care routine, feel balanced while working and living at home, understand how essential oils are benefiting me. And the constraints were they only have so many oils at home, they only have one diffuser, and I lead a busy lifestyle at home and don't have tons of spare time. The next section is say, think, and feel. So these are things that while using the product or around the same time they're using the product, what things are people thinking to themselves, saying to other people around them, or feeling? Some examples I used are, I need to wind down, I don't have any time for myself, and always feeling stuck in work mode. The next section is see. So put yourself in the user's shoes and think about what you would be seeing around you as you're using the product. I figured my user would be seeing their oils in their diffuser, they'd be looking at the app, seeing the rituals they've set up, and they would be seeing a list of oils that they've been using recently within the app. Next is what they might hear while using the product. They might hear the diffuser starting, maybe a dog barking in the background, their clients or manager on the phone, a baby crying, or maybe cars going by outside. So as you can see, you're really just setting the scene here. Next is tasks and actions, and these can be both related and unrelated to the app. Just basically anything that could be going on at once for someone using the product you're designing. So they need to create a ritual. Maybe they need to fold laundry or feed the baby. Maybe they need to write a lesson plan, and maybe they need to return several emails. Now moving on to the bottom section, we're going to think about some distractions they might have. While using the app, they might get a bunch of text notifications or social media notifications. They might be getting emails. They might have kids running around in the background, or even pets that need their attention, or even the TV or music playing. Next is motivations. So the things I wrote down are showing up for their families, their work, creativity, exercise and yoga, relaxation, freedom and control, rituals and consistency, and nature. These were all really common among the people that I talked to. And lastly, we're going to talk about the column all the way to the right, which is frustrations. So in talking to people through these interviews, I noticed a lot of common frustrations that people mentioned. And those were notifications, too much stimulus, noisiness, and messiness. So as you can see, not all of these things are things that I can control within the app experience. Some of them are happening outside of the product, but some of them I can control, and it's really important to keep all of them in mind whenever I'm designing. So for me, I felt a ton of commonalities between everyone that I ended up interviewing, so I actually didn't end up creating more than one empathy map. But if you're interviewing a lot of different people that fall into different categories, maybe you want to break up by age group or profession or home environment, or maybe they have kids versus don't have kids. If you're seeing a relationship that differs between categories in that way, then you could definitely complete 2 different or even 3 different empathy maps if they're going to be a lot different from each other. It really just depends on your project and your participants, and again, always go back to your research goals. Okay, so now you've written down your initial reactions, some really standout quotes or insights, and you have your empathy map. So now you can kind of summarize your findings and insights. And the way I did this was just by calling out the 5 most important insights that prove my hypothesis and are really going to drive the direction of my project. My first key insight was that people use oils depending on the time of day or intended activity. And this might seem obvious, but this was really important for me to prove in order to prove the concept for my app. So it was great that all of the insights I got from my interviews did confirm this hypothesis. The next really important insight was I learned that people often feel their diffuser is out of sight, out of mind. And this is a really important insight because my app should be something that reminds them to use their diffuser as much as they want to use the diffuser. So that's a really great opportunity, and I'm glad that I got that insight from my interviews. The next insight is that people are comfortable using tech within their wellness routines. And this was something I was hoping was true, but wasn't sure. So it was great that I was able to prove this to be true as well, at least within the sample of people I was interviewing. Next, I learned that people want to understand the benefits of the specific essential oils they're using and the frequency with which they're using them. And so this is something that came up a lot, and so I definitely want to add a feature that will help with that into the app. And lastly, I learned that they do not like notifications. This came up so much in my interviews, so something that I wanted to make note of, and whenever I'm designing the experience, I want to make sure there are as few notifications as possible. The notifications that are being used are really intentional and important, and aren't super disruptive in any way. So once you've summarized those key insights, then it's a natural time to start thinking about the most important features that you're going to include within your app. So I decided to start to jot down on some sticky notes the key features that were coming to mind that I think would help solve all of these problems and really answer these insights. And then I even went a step further and started jotting down some sub features, some things that are nice to haves. And so by jotting down all of my ideas, then later on I can go and cherry pick the ones that are most important and nix the ones that are just filling space and not really helping the user. So that's all I've got for part 3. In part 4, we're going to be taking the feature list you created and putting it into information architecture, as well as start the process of sketching. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.